I once fell briefly in love with a young woman who seemed to be a feminist, and by feminist, I would see that she'd wear certain clothes that this is what a feminist looks like, and stuff like that. And I was always kind of shocked by that, and I would trip over myself saying that why would you why would you do that? You don't need that stuff because it to me in my conception of feminism she didn't need that. She was a woman. She didn't have anything to prove. Now, it seems to me that there are certain people who need to be activists, insofar as the activism activates some sort of dialogue with an identity. Now, whether that identity is the identity that they are, like such as a woman who's a feminist, or somebody who is interacting with an identity that they're not, that they want to interact with and to, make reparations for or help along. Now, that doesn't mean that all activism is like that, but a lot of the performative aspect of activism is that you go around with these signs and these shirts, and it's a performance. So you're dressing up and you're modeling that sort of that sort of role in society. And so there's a certain class of activist wherein activism activates some sort of dialogue with their self. And then there's a certain sort of person that's an artist that sees that they can make a living dealing with and giving the finery for that activation to happen. And so there's the cause, and then there's the people who want to champion that cause, and then there's the people who dress the champion so that everybody else knows that there is something that is being championed. And in that dressing up of what is being championed, there is the possibility for people to be removed from the actuality of the actual cause. Now, the thing is, whether feminism is something that's actually needed or not is one discussion, and then there is the question of whether or not feminism as it manifests is necessarily necessary, if it actually is accomplishing something that is productive, that is actually helping along the people that it or the aspects of society that it's seeking to focus on are necessarily being resolved by the way that they are focusing on it, and through all the the pageantry that goes along with all these marches and all these grandiose statements, all this political theater, right? And within theater, there's a certain aspect of lifting off from the actual, where things become dreamlike, things become exploratory and expressionistic, and that is a very addictive aspect of life, of being a human being, of having this thing called the imagination, of having this thing that is able to variate and to heighten up the intensity of emotions and the importance of certain events, and really bringing to life and really pouring one's energy into this project that other people recognize. And in that transaction of pouring energy into something that other people recognize, it's a transcendent aspect. And the whole thing about theater is that you transcend this very kind of boring, kind of just very rudimentary existence where you're just kind of like going through your day and you're getting enough money to get, food and stuff and just survival and stuff like that, and maybe doing something meaningful. But within the theater, you're not doing anything that is directly attached to the material world. You're doing something that's purely meaningful. And there's some part of me that has always recognized that from a very early age, I don't know how early, but when I started to experiment with being infatuated, I really exploited my infatuation because I was getting off not on being in love with this one woman, but I was getting off on the act of performing being in love with, this woman or that woman or this woman, that woman. I should say girls, because this is back when I was, just verging into teenagerness. So I've always known that I was very seduced, or very likely to be seduced by expression. by expression itself. And so when I turn around and like armed with that knowledge and seeing that expectation and expression and disappointment are this very this unwieldy concoction that is going from expectation to disappointment with a very slim moment of transcendence between the expectation and the disappointment, and noticing pretty early on that my imagination would always be greater than what I would actually achieve unless I could train myself. And this is what caused my own change, and then my own criticism of people who get stuck in this performative cycle, is that there's nothing that really satisfies me that only exists in the imagination. And there's nothing that satisfies me that only exists in the material manifestation. But there's something inherently satisfying in taking that imagination and the material and engaging on a very slow, very mundane, very unsightly manner over and over and over again at getting those two things to bind to each other. And not to say that is itself transcendent, but in focusing my energies on the work of getting reality and the dream of a better reality to interlock and to somehow get closer to each other, then I learn what I really want. I learn what's really possible, and not just that fantastical possibility of a blank page or a blank canvas or a theater full of waiting eyes, right? The sheer possibility of what is possible. I don't know if anybody really understands the obsession that I have with that, because that's how I would transcend expectation, would be to fall in love with pure potentiality, with pure possibility, and to romanticize the implements of art, because the implements of art themselves are infinitely more potentially satisfying than any given art I could attain, but that potentiality is still not reality, so I need to master and to get past the fetishization of any given aspect of the creation, of that melding the imagination into reality. And to bring this back to activism and the problem that I have with activism, the problem that I have maybe with utopianism and with what I loosely define as progressivism right now, and people like dreaming of an equitable reality, and they're dreaming of free tuition and free college and free healthcare and all these great claims that I would love. I would love if somehow we automated these necessities so that we can focus on greater things. But the thing is that the problem is always in implementing that. And we can get very swept up in dreaming that and in inspiring other people to dream along with us. And then there's that cliff of disappointment that we reach when we realize that our ideals will never be fulfilled because other people are standing in the way. Other people don't want change. And so we go out there. Inevitably, we either drown ourselves in sorrow, or we go and we enforce our dream on other people. And we end up making a bigger problem than is already, because we're trying to skip over the patient process of implementing what is possible into what is actual. So back to falling in love briefly with a young woman who, she's probably still considers herself a feminist and holds signs and cares about immigration and probably wants to abolish ICE and probably wants to, reconfigure our borders and make things more just and equitable. The thing about me, I want to get into why I kept on being not disappointed, but kind of really, you really want to be a feminist? You really want to be an activist? Because I think that she has the potential of actually not being disappointed, of having this dream and carrying it to the next step. And so a lot of the feminists, a lot of the activists that I criticize, they don't actually want to implement anything. They just want to be in that performative aspect of being seen as possible, as being seen as aiming toward that great utopian thing. And the thing is that there's people out there who do dream big, but who have the strength and the power to implement their dreams and the patience to do that. And so, I think I myself can change my, wariness and my skepticism outright against these various forms of progressive activism by judging the individual that takes up that dream not as some way of escaping reality, but as a yoke, as something that ties them to reality, something that makes reality meaningful to them, that makes the plodding through life meaningful. Because they're not as romantic as I and a lot of the people who write all these articles online are. They are, they're real people that really want to, live a good life and make sure that other people live a good life too. And that is true progress, is incremental progress. And some of us are gifted with dreams and cursed with disappointments, and others of us are not tempted by dreams, but put dreams in the right place, kind of like the right kind of necklace on a neck, a simple necklace that glints in just the right way and makes that which is just a little bit better. Those are some random thoughts. I'm going to get back to doing other things. Good night.